Hi, I'm Kat.
And I'm Susan.
We're friends, moms, wives, and small business owners.
And we care deeply about the future.
This is a space for real conversations about real politics.
From two women living it every day.
No spin, no shouting, just truth, respect, and a hope for a brighter tomorrow.
We are Left Right USA.
Welcome to the conversation.
Hello. Today we are going to talk about how the Trump administration is ignoring and slandering of federal judges.
So let's go over quickly the duties of the three branches of government in regards to our laws. So Congress makes the laws. The very first section of the Constitution gives Congress the power to make laws. Right. All legislative powers herein granted shall be vested in a Congress of the United States.
Right.
The judicial branch interprets the laws
and
decides how they apply and makes sure the laws are constitutional. And that's in Article 3, Section 2. It lays out the duties of the courts. The judicial power shall extend to all cases in law and equity arising under this Constitution, the laws of the United States and treaties made. And then the executive branch sees that the laws are carried out.
Right.
One of the main duties of the president, as established in the Constitution in Article 2, Section 3, is to take care that the laws be faithfully executed.
And those are the Constitution's exact words. Take care that the laws be faithfully executed.
Yes, and the Constitution even prescribes the oath that the president must take when he enters office. I do solemnly swear that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States and will, to the best of my ability, preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
And I think there was a big controversy about when Trump was sworn in and took that oath that he did not put his hand on the Bible.
I heard that. That was
and
kind of
I saw the video.
He did his first term.
His first term,
but not
there were
the second time.
There were a lot of differences between his first term and this term.
Yeah.
So there are over 300 legal cases that have been filed against this administration so far.
Yeah. And
I think that some people do argue that this unprecedented number of legal challenges is proof that people just hate Trump.
I've heard that too. They're like, "Oh, we just hate President Trump."
Yeah,
that's why they're filing all these cases.
And they're also saying that judges that have ruled against Trump and the government are liberal activist judges who are trying to legislate from the bench. These claims just don't hold water.
No.
Legal experts agree that many actions of this administration are illegal. In fact, an unprecedented number of their actions are illegal. So if you look down in our description in our comments below, you will see some links to some of these actions.
Yeah, now and some of the experts' opinion about the actions, and they're talking about why they are illegal.
Right. And I thank you for putting all of that together, Susan. Definitely. Yeah. The GAO, the Government Accountability Office, has also found the administration has done at least 3 of the 39 illegal actions regarding the impoundment of funds have been found to be illegal.
Yep.
And then also at least 60 different judges in appellate courts have ruled preliminarily against this administration so far, both Republican and Democrat appointed judges. So it just doesn't hold weight that these are left-wing liberal activist judges.
Some of the judges were appointed by President Trump himself.
Right.
So yeah, some argue that the actions of this administration, well, maybe they're illegal, but breaking the law and ignoring judicial orders, it's necessary because of the exceptional circumstances that we are under. The United States is in danger, and President Trump and his administration have to fix it. And I was looking at that a little bit and thinking, no. President Trump, he posted on X in March that he who saves his country does not violate any law. Speaking about himself.
Right.
But I want to bring up an interesting quote that I ran into. It says, "In the history of state terror, the escape from law into coercion takes 3 forms,
right?
All of which were on display in the White House: the leader principle, the state of exception, and the zone of statelessness. And this is from an article by Timothy Snyder, who's an English historian who specializes in American history.
Right.
And I want to briefly go over that. It's going to come into play.
Right.
The leader principle is...
Because, see, I hadn't heard of this until you brought this up.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Right.
So the leader principle is basically a philosophy that says the absolute authority of a single leader whose will is the ultimate source of law and policy should be in charge of a nation. Obviously not what our country is based on.
Right.
Our country is based on a government of the people, for the people, by the people, not on the absolute authority of a single leader.
Right.
Okay, the second one in the quote, the state of exception, is the idea that special circumstances require ignoring the law. And the third principle is the zone of statelessness, the idea that people can be placed outside normal state borders where the law has no claim on them.
Okay.
So the claim here that it's okay to break the law because of special circumstances, the United States in danger, President Trump has to save it, that's the state of exception. That's a dangerous and a false ideal.
Right.
As the quote stated, this is a favorite argument of those who want to create authoritarian governments.
Right.
There's an emergency.
Right.
This is a special case. The problems are too big to follow the law. No, historically and factually, this excuse does not hold water. Let's take the time, let's do it right, let's follow the law.
Right. This administration seems to have adopted the policy of obstruction and delay in its court cases, and judges have noticed. There have been many rebukes of the federal government's conduct in these cases from multiple judges. Recent complaints against DOJ lawyers include allegations of ignoring court orders, attempting to influence judges, misrepresenting facts in court, and delaying compliance with court requests. Now, Nancy Gertner, a Harvard Law School professor, sat as a federal judge for 17 years and quotes, governmental officials defying the court? It never came up. Literally, never happened. There's been nothing like this in American history. There have been people who threatened not to obey the law, especially post the Civil War. But this is a sustained attack on the courts we haven't seen before.
Yes, exactly.
Unquote.
And let's discuss one of those attacks on the courts.
Yes.
Basically. So this is the case of those immigrants that were sent to CECOT prison in El Salvador.
Right.
So on March 15th, President Trump invoked the Alien Enemies Act to send between 200 and 300 immigrants to CECOT prison in El Salvador without any proper due process, claiming they were all members of a Venezuelan gang, Tren de Aragua.
Right.
And Judge Boasberg ordered the planes to return, but his order was ignored.
Yep.
So there's a former DOJ lawyer, I don't know if I'll pronounce his name right, but Erez Raveni. He turned whistleblower regarding, and this is a long title, Principal Associate Deputy Attorney General Emil Bove, conduct in regards to sending the men to El Salvador. So he gave whistleblower evidence that Emil Bove advised it was okay for the planes to continue and said that the Department of Justice would need to consider telling the courts, F you.
Right.
So there's now a second whistleblower's evidence against Emil Bove as well, that he lied to the Senate Confirmation Committee and he told attorneys to mislead the court. And Judge Boasberg was looking into this, ignoring of his order, and he has stated that government lawyers could be charged with contempt of court.
Yes. Yes.
And those proceedings have been hung up. A federal appeals court issued a temporary administrative stay on the contempt proceedings that has not seen progress in 3 months.
Right.
It might be a coincidence, it might not, that 2 of the 3 members of that appeals court that issued the stay were appointed by President Trump.
Right.
Maybe not.
Right. I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, I would like to think, and I do believe that the majority of our judges in our judicial branch follow the law.
Right.
Regardless and not
of
necessarily, not necessarily following blind loyalty to Trump.
Right, or to whoever appointed them. Yeah.
So when we look at the Supreme Court order to return Kilmar Abrego Garcia from El Salvador, which the administration delayed for 3 months before they finally brought him back, the case of Kilmar Abrego has become a focal point. Mr. Garcia is originally from El Salvador and fled the country to the U.S. when he was 16 years old due to the threats and harassment against his family from a local gang. He was among those sent to the prison CECOT in El Salvador, despite a judge's prior order that he not be returned to El Salvador because of the danger to himself. A government lawyer admitted in court that Mr. Garcia was mistakenly sent to CECOT, and Judge Paula Zinnes ordered Mr. Garcia's return to the U.S. Now, on April 10th, the Supreme Court ruled that the U.S. government had to facilitate the return of Kilmar Abrego Garcia to the U.S. The federal government then claimed that they no longer had jurisdiction over Mr. Garcia, as he was now in El Salvador. It has been revealed that El Salvador told the UN that the U.S. had control of and responsibility over these men it sent to CECOT. And that makes sense to me because I would join discussions online talking about the due process. And I specifically connected with this case with Kilmar Abrego because this man is an innocent man. He has no criminal record. I reviewed the documents that Homeland Security had on him, and they show in their documents he has no criminal record, no criminal history. And the U.S. delayed returning Mr. Garcia for 3 months before finally bringing him back to the U.S. on June 17. And then the reason they brought him back was to charge him with crimes. I think that with this case, it's not particularly the men, it's the precedent being set. Okay, the judges, the juries, those are the only people who are legally authorized to send anyone to prison. Not Trump, not Homan, not Miller, not the administration, and in accordance with the U.S. Civil and Criminal Code, which requires a trial and sentencing for anyone to go to prison.
And we looked up right before we made the video today, just refreshing our memory, the Supreme Court actually upheld the lower court's ruling on that these men had to have due process. Even if the Alien Enemies Act was invoked, they still had to have due process. You know, even if they were just being deported, much less being sent to prison.
Yeah, it would be considered false imprisonment.
Yeah.
Sent directly to prison on the suspicion of being in a gang.
Yeah.
And the Alien Enemies Act was also struck down by the courts as a reason for the administration, at least temporarily, for the administration to deport anyone. Mm-hmm. There was no invasion. Mm-hmm. There is no invasion. Right. It would have to be Venezuela and the government of Venezuela, or the government of El Salvador, or whatever country would have to be organized and be invading our country for that to apply.
Right. But even if it did apply, the Supreme Court upheld that they still had to have due process.
Right. And
Even
what does due process mean? A lot of people don't even understand what that means. Yeah. It's like they didn't get due process coming in, they don't get due process going out. No, that's not America.
Apply.
That's not our Constitution.
Yeah. It just basically means they need enough notification that the government plans to take some action against them, that they need time to prepare their defense, and they need to have a hearing.
Right.
Before a judge. That's all it means. And it's something that we have committed to as a country.
Yes.
To have that process so that justice has a better chance of being done.
Yes, because there's so many cases wherein they have the wrong person, or they have a U.S. citizen. And there have been way too many mistakes where I've seen a U.S. citizen having been detained for days or even months before they're released. Again, that's denying life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. That's denying constitutional rights, basic constitutional rights.
Right. And it goes back to those claims those three things from the quote, right?
Yes.
So first of all is the state of exception here, where they're saying, oh, well, you know, we can't do due process for all these people because there's too many of them, right? Too many cases. And we do have a backlog of like 3.5 million cases, but we just awarded $175 million to ICE. I think we can afford to hire some more immigration judges. This is a whole other thing, because we only have 700. I've heard 600 or 700. But more than 100 have been fired,
and they're being laid off.
And they're being laid off. And so it's like, and they also capped the number of judges that could be hired, immigration judges, at 800. And I don't understand why. We have this big backlog. We say we're going to deport even more people, and then we cap the number of judges to 800. I don't understand that. It seems like we're creating an artificial state of exception.
Yes.
Saying, oh well, we can't do due process because there's too many. No, we could totally work through it.
Yes.
But there's another
and the fact that it's inconvenient doesn't make it legal.
Right.
It still remains illegal.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's another part from that quote that comes into play here. So, the zone of statelessness says the government moves people outside of its territory or into some special zone, and it claims it has no more authority over them, no power to bring them back. That is a tactic of state terror.
Right.
And that's what was
authoritarian
done
government type of
with these men
tactic.
in Venezuela.
Right.
Or these Venezuelan men in El Salvador.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I understand in the last couple of days, though, that El Salvador released all of those prisoners.
Yeah. The Venezuelans.
Back into Venezuela.
Yeah.
The CECOT prisoners that were falsely imprisoned in March.
Yeah.
So that was some good news on that front.
That was good.
That was good news. There was celebration in Venezuela. The El Salvador leader decided to do, I believe it was a swap, and released all of those prisoners. And some really horrible stories coming from those men that we can follow up and talk about at another time.
Right.
So to stay on topic, though, with the
Ignoring
federal
the
judges,
yeah.
orders and ignoring those by the administration. What else have we seen?
There's also been other instances of ignoring federal judges in relation to restoring funding that had been impounded, and then them not doing it. So remember in the first week, after the first week of President Trump's term, and he issued that funding freeze across the federal government.
Yeah.
Everything just stopped.
Crazy.
Right?
Yes.
So quickly that was challenged in court. And Judge John McConnell issued a temporary restraining order against the funding freeze. And he found that the funding freeze violated the principle of the separation of powers established in the Constitution and negated the will of the people as expressed through congressional appropriations through the budget. But shortly afterwards, it became apparent that funding had not been restored in many cases.
Ignoring a court order.
Yeah. So an HIV program, programs to fight pollution, to monitor air quality, to help low-income people get solar panels, and many other across multiple states had not had access to their grant money reinstated.
Right.
So Judge McConnell issued a second sternly worded order.
Right.
And the federal government ignored it again. Funding for cancer research, other illnesses were still held up. Funding for foreign aid was blocked. So this pattern of ignoring judges' orders has continued as other judges have ruled on withheld and clawed back funding. And even the Supreme Court upheld a lower judge's order to unfreeze that $2 billion in foreign aid.
Right. And Trump and federal officials have persistently slandered and threatened judges who aren't judging as they wish and have called for their impeachments. Now, President Trump effectively warned the courts not to interfere in what he claimed was his anti-corruption agenda. He implied that if provoked, he would instigate Department of Justice inquiries into individual judges, saying that it would be a very serious violation if they tried to stand in his way. Trump has followed through on this threat. The DOJ has now issued its second misconduct order against a federal judge. In March, Trump also called Judge Boasberg a radical left lunatic judge and called for his impeachment on social media, although the judge had a relatively nonpartisan record before this latest ruling regarding the deportations of the immigrants to the El Salvador CECOT prison. Other top Republicans like Senator Mike Lee have publicly talked about impeaching judges who ruled against this administration. Now, Andrew Clyde, a Republican congressman from Georgia, called for Judge McConnell to be impeached, saying the judge was a partisan activist weaponizing our judicial system.
Which is ridiculous, because Judge McConnell was just trying to uphold the Constitution.
Right.
The separation of powers. It's like, okay, you can't withhold all federal funding. That's something only our Congress can do.
Yeah, and then even Chief Justice Roberts scolded politicians who disparaged the rule of law in his end-of-year report for 2024. Quote, within the past few years, elected officials across the political spectrum have raised the specter of open disregard for federal court rulings. Violence, intimidation, and defiance directed at judges because of their work undermine our republic and are wholly unacceptable. Yeah. End of quote. Now, Justice Roberts again spoke out against the administration threats to judges in March. quote, "For more than 2 centuries, it has been established that impeachment is not an appropriate response to disagreement concerning a judicial decision. The normal appellate review process exists for that purpose," unquote.
Yeah.
So there is a proper procedure to follow if a judge is suspected of improper decisions, as Justice Roberts mentioned, the appellate review process. This is what the current administration should be initiating if they really think judges are ruling improperly.
Yeah.
Not slandering and threatening judges to the public, but yet not initiating the actual process that exists to review a judge. It seems like public bluster because the administration knows their complaints wouldn't stand up to a factual review in court.
Right.
See, so slandering and threatening federal judges like this also encourages extremists to threaten our judges with physical violence. The U.S. Marshals Service, which is in charge of the safety of federal judges, say that threats against judges have doubled.
And that's really serious. The judges are worried. Their families are worried because they're having threats against them and their family members.
Yep.
Death threats.
Yep. And I think that the whole pizza delivery
Oh, yeah. I heard about that.
kind of situation where people are sending pizzas to judges' homes with an indication
in the name of the son of a judge who was murdered.
Yeah, saying we know where you live.
Yeah,
it's a threat. It's like a veiled threat.
Yeah,
to these judges. I mean that's completely unwarranted.
That's not the country I want to live in.
No.
Yeah. So federal agencies themselves have also put out false information about judges.
Yeah.
On June 27th, the Department of Justice put out a tweet on its official X account stating, "No longer will rogue judges be able to seize executive power through bogus nationwide injunctions." And that statement from the Justice Department, it not only slanders judges as rogue, it misrepresents nationwide injunctions. So,
how so?
Up until the recent Supreme Court emergency decision, which narrowed nationwide injunctions, these injunctions were used and they were proper.
Yes.
And, the Supreme Court has talked about it, and there's lots of legal review about nationwide injunctions. They were proper. And even that recent decision did not ban nationwide injunctions.
See, I thought it had.
No, it just narrowed them to cases where the plaintiff could not provide complete relief without one.
Right.
So that statement was totally not true, but it's coming out of our Justice Department.
Right.
Which it's got to confuse people because they're thinking, well, I'm hearing this from the Justice Department, but it's not true. And then even like the Vice President, J.D. Vance, said judges aren't allowed to control the executive's legitimate power.
Right.
The judges weren't doing any such thing. They're not trying to control the illegitimate executive power.
Well, I also think that's a play on words because when you say legitimate power, that they're not.
Right.
They're not.
Yeah.
But that's phrased in a way to make the MAGA base believe that they are.
Right, exactly. They're trying to confuse the issue. And we know the vice president's attitude toward any attempt to restrict executive power.
Yeah.
So back in 2021, when Vice President J.D. Vance was then a venture capitalist and he was a book author, he was predicting that Trump would be elected for a second presidential term. And during a podcast appearance, he spoke about President Trump being back in power and firing every civil servant in the administrative state and replacing them with our people.
Right, that's part of Project 2025.
Yep, and then he went on to advise President Trump what President Trump should do if the Supreme Court were to try and stop his agenda. He invoked a likely not accurate quote from Andrew Jackson relating to the 1832 conflict between him and the justices, where he supposedly said, stand before the country like, he was telling President Trump that he should stand before the country like Andrew Jackson did and say, the Chief Justice has made his ruling, now let him enforce it.
So that sounds like a challenge,
He was advocating for President Trump to just ignore it and
ignore
what the courts say.
Courts to say,
who cares?
Me, like a bully on the playground.
Even if it's the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court.
Right.
Just make me do it. So we know his opinion on that.
Yeah. So the Supreme Court's decision of Marbury v. Madison
that's a critical one.
Firmly established that the courts were the final arbiter of the law because they alone had the power to declare congressional laws unconstitutional. It laid down the bedrock rule that the courts have the last word on what's constitutional and what is not.
Yeah.
on what the government can and cannot do. It is a foundational precept of American democracy.
Right. So altogether, all these actions by this administration paint the picture of a group which does not respect the judicial branch and intends to ignore it or slander it when it gets in their way.
Right.
And that the administration will commend and obey judges only when judicial decisions go as they wish.
Right.
And this is not upholding the oath of office that the president swore when he promised to do the best of my ability to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States.
Wow.
So, do you have a comment or a question? Drop it in the comments below or email us.
Is there something you would like us to talk about in a future episode? Let us know.
Our next episode will be on corrupting the justice system.
So check out our Facebook, Blue Sky, and Substack accounts to keep informed and get updates.
Press the like button and hit subscribe to help get the word out.
Welcome to the conversation.